The 2nd century church father Tertullian once wrote in his Apologeticus that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. Such was a phrase used during the time of the early church when Christianity was under severe persecution by the Roman Empire. In those days, the blood of martyrs soaked the earth as believers were fed to the lions, beaten, whipped, sawed in half, put to death by the sword, burned in the fire, and chained in prisons. Tertullian maintained that the more Christians were persecuted and mowed down, the more they would multiply because the blood of Christians are seed. The sacrifice of these martyrs inspires new believers, and their deaths were and are still seen as a powerful witness to faith that spreads and multiplies the church, leading to new conversions. In the eternal city of Rome alone, one can look no further to find several shrines and the catacombs themselves, which houses relics and monuments of some of these martyrs and saints. Such was one heroic saint, whose memory still lives today in the Trastevere district, one of Rome's most vibrant and visited neighborhoods.
Hello everyone, it's Anton on the go here, and today I am in the Trastevere neighborhood district of Rome, and right behind me is a church dedicated to one of the most beloved saints and among the most famous of the Roman martyrs within the Catholic Church. And she is also the patron saint of music and musicians. Yes, she is no other than Sant Cecilia. Now, Sant Cecilia is buried inside this basilica dedicated to her, and inside we can also find a famous and beautiful Baroque sculpture of her by Stefano Maderno, which brings awe and still puzzles scholars to this day. So come join me inside as I take you into this beautiful church dedicated to the saint of music.
The Basilica of St. Cecilia was built, according to tradition, on the site of the family mansion where the saint lived. And already in the early years of Christianity, there is reference to her name and an early church built there dedicated to Cecilia. A famous beautiful Baroque statue of her could be found here, which still puzzles scholars to this day. The current basilica has undergone continuous reconstructions and additions. And according to a legend, the saint appeared to Pope Paschal I, revealing to him the exact spot where her body was buried, which was in the catacombs of Calixtus, because prior to this, it was never found. The pontiff then, in the year 822, transposed Cecilia's body and built the church in a basilical form on the site of the previous one. Between the 12th and 13th centuries, the cloister, atrium, and bell tower were added. And in the period of the Counter-Reformation against Luther, many Catholics wanted the roots of the Church of Rome and the stories of the martyrs and saints of the first centuries to be rediscovered. In the year 1599, during the renovation works, Cardinal Paolo Emilius Fondrati had the tomb of Saint Cecilia opened, thus revealing the miraculously intact or incorrupt body, dressed in white, and with wounds of her martyrdom on her neck. Stefano Maderno was commissioned to sculpt a marble statue, reproducing the exact position in which the body of the saint was found. From the 16th century, the basilica was continually restored, respectively by Cardinals Giacomo Doria and Francesco Acquaviva, with the addition of the 18th century monumental entrance that preserves the ancient columns of pink granite and African marble, by Fernandino Fuga. So who exactly is Saint Cecilia? Honored and regarded as a popular saint since the early church, Cecilia, or Cecilia in Italian, is mentioned in the list of saints in the first Eucharistic Prayer. She is one of 7 women, excluding the Blessed Virgin Mary, commemorated by name in the canon of the Mass. According to popular tradition, Cecilia was a Roman noblewoman from a wealthy patrician family who lived in the 3rd century. Sources say she was born around the years 200 to 230 AD. She was known for her piety and charity to the poor, with some artwork portraying Cecilia as giving her expensive robes to the poor of Rome. Not many sources tell of the point when she converted to Christianity, but we do know that at a young age, Cecilia gave herself to Christ and secretly made a vow of celibacy and virginity. Her family must have known about this, but according to the story, despite her desire to remain a virgin, as was the custom of the time period, she was given in marriage to a young nobleman named Valerian, who was a pagan. Cecilia today is known as the patroness of music and musicians, and is always represented with a pipe organ or some other musical instrument. There are two reasons for this, and the tradition derives from the Acts of Martyrs or the Passio, where her story is recounted, in which it is said that on Cecilia and Valeriano's wedding night, as the organs were playing, Cecilia in her heart was singing to the Lord, saying, "Make my heart pure." And this interior song was taken by tradition to express a love for music offered to God. This is the first reason. On that same wedding night, Cecilia disclosed to her husband her wish to remain a virgin, and told him of her guardian angel who has continuously been watching her, and that if he should violate her virginity, it would cost him dearly. Smitten by her piety, Valeriano wished to see the angel, in which Cecilia then told him to go to the Appian Way to be baptized by Pope Urban. Then after, he would be able to see the angel. After being baptized, he returned and saw Cecilia praying in her chamber, and an angel by her with flaming wings, holding 2 crowns of roses and lilies, which he placed on their heads, and then he vanished. The brother of Valeriano, Tiburtius, entered and wondered at the fragrance and beauty of the flowers at that season of the year. When he heard the story of how they had obtained these crowns, he also consented to be baptized. Another man by the name of Massimo, said to be the servant of Valeriano, was also baptized. After their baptism, the 2 brothers and Massimo devoted themselves to burying the martyrs slain daily by the Roman prefect of the city, Tertius Almachius. They were soon arrested and brought before the prefect, and when they refused to sacrifice to the gods, they were executed with the sword. In the meantime, despite her sorrow, Cecilia was preaching and had converted many, whom Pope Urban baptized. The trial and martyrdom of Cecilia soon followed after the death of her husband Valeriano, Tiburcio, and Massimo. She was arrested, but because of her nobility and youth, the prefect first attempted to get Cecilia to recant her faith by worshipping the Roman gods. When they failed to do so, her captors decided to execute her in secrecy in order to avoid the expected criticism from the public. She was then confined under house arrest and condemned to be suffocated to the vapor bath inside her home. Varying sources say she remained in the stifling environment for an entire night and an entire day, while others say she was locked inside for 3 days. Cecilia remained unharmed and shocked her executors when they found her alive and well. The former had said that it was her guardian angel who had cooled down the temperature of the room that enabled her to live. Brought again before the prefect, he made one last attempt to get Cecilia to recant her faith, but she still stubbornly refused. An experienced executioner was then sent to behead her, where she was struck 3 times at the back of her neck. But due to the loss of courage at having to kill such a young and beautiful girl, he failed to fully sever her head with the 3 blows prescribed by the law. He ultimately fled, leaving the saint on the pavement of her bath, alive and fully conscious, with her head half severed. With a white towel wrapped around her head, Cecilia was lying on her right side, her hands crossed in prayer. In one last attempt to get her to recant her faith, her executioners coached that they could restore her back to health if only she would give up her allegiance to Jesus. Cecilia turned her face to the floor, and unable to speak at this point, she let out a response through her fingers, 3 extended on her right hand and 1 on the left, signifying her allegiance to the one God in 3 persons. This was her final silent profession of faith in the Holy Trinity. Cecilia remained praying in that position for 3 days and nights before passing to eternal life. The second reason why Cecilia is considered the patron saint of music is because it is said that while she was being beheaded, Cecilia continued to sing in her heart to the Lord, recalling her wedding night to Valeriano and her promise to God.
So I am currently now in the beautiful crypt under the Basilica of Santa Cecilia, and I have to say that this is one of the most beautiful crypts I have ever seen, with all the mosaics up here as you can see in the ceiling and the tiles on the floor. It is simply amazing. And behind me here, where I'm pointing, is where the body of Santa Cecilia lies, as well as that of her husband Valeriano and her brother-in-law Tiburtius and Massimo as well, who died as Christians. So to go underground here, you have to pay a small fee of €2, but it is totally worth it. As you can see, very, very beautiful crypt. And while going through the archaeological excavations, you see the remains of a Roman house believed to be the house of Santa Cecilia's home, and there is also a tannery right here beside the house, the remains of the house. And you can really see that, walking through the crypt, that Santa Cecilia, Sant Cecilia, was really from an aristocratic family, from a wealthy family. The crypt here is also where Sant Cecilia was tortured in her own home. So the emperor locked her up in her apartment here. I'm not so sure if it is also in this crypt or just down the passageway over here. I have to ask later on. But we know for a fact that she was locked up here, under here, Sant Cecilia, and smothered in very, very hot gases. And we call it the balnia. That's what it was called. That's what I read a while ago. And she was tortured here for 3 days, but when the executioners found her, she was still alive.
The preserved Roman tiles, tannery, and archaeological site below the Basilica of Santa Cecilia provides proof that a large house belonging to a wealthy Roman family once stood on the spot, which is in line with the tradition that Cecilia came from a noble patrician background. Some say that Cecilia died in the year 177 AD, while other more recent scholars agree that she was martyred during the reign of Alexander Severus, around the years 222 to 235 AD. Cecilia is one of the most famous of the Roman martyrs, and her existence is a historical fact. The relation between her and Valeriano, Tiburtius, and Massimo, mentioned in the Acts of the Martyrs, also hold historical foundation. At the same time, some details bear the mark of pious romance, like many other similar accounts compiled in the 5th and 6th centuries. Today, there are still some questions that remain regarding Saint Cecilia, and they mainly surround her supposed incorrupt body, whether or not Saint Cecilia's body is still intact as was claimed in earlier documents.
So after the end of the Christian persecution, the relics of the Christians buried in the city's many catacombs were moved to churches for veneration. Saint Cecilia's remains were also transferred in the early 800s to a church built on the ruins of her former home, which is this site actually. So it is said that hundreds of years later, during a restoration of this church in 1599, Saint Cecilia's tomb was opened, revealing her body to still be miraculously intact. and artist Stefano Maderno was commissioned to create a marble sculpture of the saint, which can still be seen today here in the Basilica. And it's a very beautiful artwork, actually. People admire this sculpture of Sant Cecilia, and really, like this sculpture of her has more or less become like one of her famous images of her body being in a state of incorruption. Regardless of the statue being a masterpiece, sources still disagree about whether this artwork of Maderno is really a depiction of how the saint's body was found in 1599 or was an invention of the artist himself.
The sculpture, which depicts Saint Cecilia lying on her right side, her hands tied, and her face turned toward the ground, and the wound of her martyrdom visible upon her neck, is considered, as I've mentioned, a masterpiece. There is no doubt that Maderno has surely captured the powerful gracefulness of Cecilia's final moments.
So I learned the place where Santa Cecilia was tortured for 3 days isn't downstairs in the crypt, but actually right at this place. This is called the Calidarium or the Calidario Chapel, and unfortunately it's not open to the general public. It can only be accessed through a tour, which personally for me is frustrating and shouldn't be the case because this is holy ground. But anyway, that's a different story. So inside here, I was told by the sister who was running the shrine, is the place where Cecilia was placed under house arrest and smothered in boiling gases for 3 days. After 3 days, however, to the surprise of her executioners, she didn't die because her guardian angel came to protect her by cooling down the temperature.
So did Saint Cecilia actually sing or play any instruments? The answer is, we do not know for sure. But what is certain is that Cecilia was a faithful Christian who was martyred for her faith, and her selfless example of faithfulness to God, even to the point of the sacrifice of her own life, made her a much-loved saint since the early days of the Church. Like all saints, Cecilia's sanctity came not from the incredible works she achieved, but because of how close she kept to Christ. She did not seek fame, nor did she desire followers. She simply loved Jesus and wanted others to love him too. She knew the truth of her faith, and filled with love, she wanted to share that truth so that she could bring as many with her to heaven as she could. She could not administer the sacraments, but she could tell others about the gospel, bring them to be baptized, and shelter priests. Most critically, Cecilia understood that her greatest calling was to place everything she had in service to Christ alone. She knew to whom she belonged, and she gave him everything. Her heart was his, and thus all who met her were gently led to God. First her husband, then his brother, and then hundreds of others. Her wealth she gave to Christ's poor and to his church. Her talent as a speaker and as a community organizer were used for Christ's glory. And finally, her life, which she gave up for him. The world today tells us to value positions and titles, and to feel wronged when we do not receive what we feel we are owed. Saint Cecilia and the many holy men and women who came before and after her knew better. She didn't ask what opportunities the church could offer her. Rather, she asked God how she could be of service to his church, and she poured out her very life answering his call. May we follow Cecilia's example of self-sacrifice and service, especially in our world today. Saint Cecilia, patron of music and musicians, pray for us. For more content, don't forget to click the like and subscribe button on Anton on the Go. God bless and Ave Maria.